Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of She Talks Business. I am super, super excited to be chatting with a dear friend and colleague of mine, Michael Devers, today about one of my favorite topics, which is reading. I invited Michael to be a guest on the show because Michael and I have passed book recommendations back and forth to each other for years now, and I thought that he would be a really interesting individual to have on the show to talk about reading. So before we dive in, let me tell you a little bit about Michael. Since 1991, Michael has partnered with leaders, executives, and owners of small to mid-sized businesses, helping them to prepare to expertly navigate their way through any crisis. Of course, we spent the first 10 minutes talking about Hurricane Ian before we started to record. Michael is skilled at uncovering, resolving, and navigating crisis situations. His insightful approach enables him to rapidly identify critical issues while capitalizing on the many opportunities that are often overlooked during a period of upheaval. These capabilities enable Michael to apply effective crisis leadership strategies across diverse industry sectors and environments. He has successfully executed projects to, this sentence is not worded well, and I'm reading and I am tripping all over it. His successfully executed projects include strategies to reduce customer concentration from 90% to below 30%, the development of compliance programs, IT infrastructure programs, EH&S programs, and the management of OSHA investigations following workplace accidents. He also advises organizations during acquisitions and periods of significant strategic change. Michael, welcome to She Talks Business.
Thank you very much for having me, Lisa. I'm a big fan of the podcast and very, very excited to make an appearance.
I am glad to have you here. You are a multi-passionate business owner. I feel like your bio doesn't really talk about all you do and, leaves out some pretty interesting parts. Was that intentional?
It probably needs updated, frankly. It's been a lot of development over the last several years, really starting with COVID. Kicked off quite a bit of change and interesting pursuits in my career.
Absolutely. One of which I can see a bottle of on a shelf behind you in your office right now.
That's right. We launched a spirits company focused on whiskey here in, I believe it was 2021 is when we started putting things together. Our first real year of sales was last year in 2022. But yeah, Bondbrecker, the spirit of New Braunfels. We are the world's first and only Hefeweizen whiskey.
That's awesome. And so how was your first year in sales? I mean, I don't expect you to tell me numbers, but I just mean in general, were you happy with how the company did for its first year?
Yeah, we were. The numbers ended up really well. We got good exposure out there. We're only in Texas right now as far as retail or restaurants and bars, available throughout the U.S. Online, of course, for direct to consumer. But, we have lofty goals, and we came a little bit short of our lofty goals, but we had a lot of people in the industry tell us that they would sell their own mothers to get the numbers we hit in our first year.
That is great.
Got to be happy with that.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So, talk to me a little bit about why you read so much, because I know that you have a lot of business things going on. You are a very, very, very busy guy. So why do you read as much as you do?
Reading is really my number one passion, for sure. And it's been incredibly valuable to me in my business life as well. But I started reading when I was 3 years old. I had a grandfather and an uncle, both who sat with me every day when I was real little, teaching me to read. And I started, like a lot of kids my age, reading the comics at 3 and quickly went on to books. And it's just been a lifelong passion. And when I released myself on my own recognizance from college, finding that it didn't offer everything I wanted it to, I really embarked on a path of self-education.
Mm-hmm. Interesting, because I have always been an avid reader myself, and my love of reading started with my aunt who lived next door to me, and she loved reading. And so at a very young age, I started reading the books that she was reading, and she had an encyclopedia set, and I would borrow her encyclopedias and read through the encyclopedias because I just was so interested in learning. And as you know, I didn't finish high school, and
Mhm.
I really do feel that most of my education has come from reading books. It's been super
Eh,
powerful.
I love it. You mentioned the encyclopedias. We had a transaction that closed a couple of years ago, and like the gift I bought myself for it was a set of the 1912 Encyclopedia Britannicas, the Cambridge edition, so that because I wanted a snapshot in time
Wow.
of kind of the world's knowledge that you couldn't get from searching the internet. And I tell you, I go to it once a week looking at, okay, here's what we know now. What did we know 100 years ago about this? And it's been
Wow.
great perspective.
That is such interesting perspective, because really Wikipedia has replaced the encyclopedia. And
Oh
so to
yeah.
have those volumes that you can refer back to see how our thinking has changed over 100 years is remarkable. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
I love it. Plus I just love getting them out and touching and feeling the books.
That's awesome. So talk to me a little bit about how reading has impacted your professional life.
Can I jump to one of my 3 books here?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
For those looking, this is the number one. All you need to know about the music business by Donald Passman.
Oh,
So I bought this in 1991. This isn't the original because the original I had it fell apart from use. Um, but it's kind of the first really earthquake book for me, in that I left OU to pursue a career in music, and there was no one else out there really helping our group. So I bought that book, the Donald Passman book, and it really started my journey of self-education that I mentioned earlier. There was nothing else like that. There was no internet at the time. There were really no other books about how to navigate your way through the music business. So that really became my textbook for the next decade. I poured through that, and it was incredibly valuable and really opened my eyes up to the fact that I didn't have to learn strictly from experience or from school.
hmm.
There was a whole wealth of knowledge out there that I could dig into if I just took the initiative, found the books, read the books, and then applied the knowledge.
Hmm. Yeah, which is the hardest part, applying the knowledge. Most people read
It-
books. In one of my previous episodes, I talk about 5 levels of reading. And, level 1 is reading for information. And level 2 is reading for insights. And level 3 is reading for ideas. Level 4 is reading for implementation. And most people, I think that's where the big gap is. They don't actually implement the insights and ideas that they gain from reading.
I don't know if that first time through reading that book, the music business book, I was really at level 4. I was probably at 1 and 2, but quickly as things came up in our career, I had that as a reference. And that's
Mhm.
where levels 3 and 4 really came in. And something would come up, and I know there's a section about that in the book. And I'd
Mhm.
go and reread and then apply it. And it was incredibly valuable.
Mhm. Yeah. Level 5, if you're listening and you haven't listened to that previous one, is reading with intention. Because I believe that when you read, once you have learned the 4 previous levels, then the way that you read changes, because now you're reading with the intention of finding the insights and the ideas so that you can implement, versus having them just randomly happen. So all you need to know about music is book number 1. What are the other 2 books?
So the second book came, it's Ryan Holiday's Ego is the Enemy. And you can see how many notes I've taken over the years on this. You mentioned crisis leadership before. I came upon this book in 2016 when I was at sort of a moment really of personal crisis in my business and in my business career. I was a little bit in my own head, feeling a little bit like a victim. I don't want to say wallowing in myself, but I was not in a good place just from a strict perspective. And that book really, really helped reset my perspective on things. It gave me great context. So many times in your career, you're deep, deep, deep in the weeds and in the trees, and it can be hard to pull back and get perspective on, the month, the year, or, even like a career trajectory on the problem you're dealing with right then. And so for me, that book was a real great reset on that.
Mhm. So, what specifically about when you think about that book, if you were going to say to someone, oh, you need to read Ego is the Enemy, why would you tell them they should read it? You need to read this book because.
When I've recommended it numerous times since I read it, and I've probably purchased, I'd say somewhere around 20 copies, 25 that I've given out to people as gifts. And it's generally when I find people are really focused on how things affect them, and they get in kind of that same mindset I was of, I don't want to say a victim mentality, but not really having the right perspective on when things hit. I probably handed out more than a dozen during COVID, when people kind of got into the mindset of, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to my business? And that, it's you can't look at it that way. You've got to have perspective, get outside of yourself, and realize that this is just what you have to deal with.
So how does one do that? Like, what did you take from that book that allowed you to shift your perspective from what was happening to you, or how you were feeling about what was happening to you, to gain greater perspective?
That it's all part of the process. The peaks, the valleys, the deep valleys, it's part of the process. Everyone has to go through those times when you just have to take it and eat your spoonful of, well, Ryan uses a very specific and colorful word in there, but it's not, even when you're having that, it's not about you. The people who are spooning it out to you aren't doing it in a personal way. And you've got to persevere, keep the long game in mind, and remember what's really important to you and what you are trying to achieve. That there's that old phrase of cutting off your nose to spite your face, which a lot of people do without realizing they're doing it, because they lose perspective on what it is they're really trying to accomplish, not just in whatever that moment happens to be, but the overall task of their career, and then how that career fits into what they're trying to accomplish with their lives.
Yeah, I love that word, perspective. I think it's an interesting word to think about as we, embark upon a new year. Are you bringing the right perspective to the table? Do you have the right perspective in terms of what's going on in your life? And how can you develop the skill of always, I guess, questioning and challenging your perspective? I have that book, but I don't think I've read it. So
You really
I'm
should.
I'm gonna have to revisit and read that book. I have his newest book here, and I think Courage is Calling. I think I saw a signed copy on Instagram.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Got a signed copy of that for Christmas. I got a signed copy of his newest book on Discipline is Destiny.
Oh, Discipline. Yes, that's it. I have Courage is Calling right here, but I have Discipline is Destiny as well, somewhere on these bookshelves.
I'm very fortunate to live only about 45 minutes to an hour away from Ryan's bookshop that he owns in Bastrop, Texas. So my youngest got a signed copy from Ryan's bookstore. I'm very fortunate to have a kid who knows to give me books.
That's awesome. That's great. So
but yeah, I've got another, sorry to interrupt, got another son he's in the Navy, and he's already very much looking forward to his post-Navy career, but he's got 2 more years to serve. And so Ryan in Ego is the Enemy talks a little bit about alive time and dead time, because my son in the Navy is kind of viewing these last 2 years of his service as somewhat of dead time, because he can't wait to get to the next thing. And it's good, again, perspective and context of, you're going to have to go through these 2 years anyway. Make it a lifetime. What are you going to do with those 2 years between now and where you really want to be? Make them work for you instead of just grinding them out.
Interesting. That's a really good perspective. Because I can see that. I immediately think of people that I know that are going through periods of time like that right now. And so that reframe would be really, really powerful for them.
Yeah.
I like
and it
that.
really was for me as well.
Cool. Well, not that I need another book to read, but I'm always looking for another book to read. I think this is the second recommendation today because someone else recommended another book earlier to me. And, we are moving in the not so distant future. And so I keep looking at my bookshelves and looking at all the books that I need to move. And I think I need a book list or a list of books to buy once I'm in the new location.
Yeah, let's ship them ahead so they're ready and waiting for you.
Yeah, exactly. So talk to me a little bit about All You Need to Know About Music. So that book, that first book that you said, really impacted your professional life. How did that book help you in the music industry? Talk to us a little bit about your career there.
So when we started trying to forge a music career as a career and not just something you did for fun on the weekends, I didn't know anything about the actual business of music. I obviously knew about the fun and the glamorous side of getting up and playing songs and getting skilled at your instrument and putting on shows, but the actual business of it, contracts, how a record deal is put together and what it means. And the biggest thing that was just a complete mystery to me was music publishing. For example, I had no idea until reading this book. I was good at math in school. So I think in terms of things can only be 100%. But when it comes to the music business and publishing, I learned from Donald Passman that it's measured in terms of 200%, that a song has 200% ownership. And that was something that I would have never known without reading the book. And it became a very, very major part of my music career. In fact, it's really the only thing I'm still doing in the music business right now is managing the publishing for the one hit song we had.
So what does that mean, 200%?
So every song, the publishing side of it, there's 200% is the way the music business looks at it when it comes to publishing. 100% of the songwriter's portion of a copyright or the publishing, and then 100% of who owns the publishing for it. So you have the songwriter and the publishing company. So for a song like ours, the songwriter was Susan Gibson. So she retains 100% of the songwriting ownership of that because she wrote it by herself. Whereas the publishing company, Pie-Eyed Groovy Music, we own 100% of the publishing side of the royalties that come in through that. And there were, basically 5 of us in that: Susan, myself, Scott, Gary, and Todd. So the 100% of the songwriter's portion and the 100% of the publishing portion adds up to 200%.
Okay, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
I can see how that would make sense in the book writing industry too, because you have the writer and you have the publisher. And sometimes the writer is the publisher and sometimes they're not.
That's right.
So yeah.
Okay. So of our song, in theory, Susan owns 120% of it.
Right.
100% of the songwriter side and 20% of the publishing side.
Yeah. Cool. My math brain needed to understand how that worked.
And that's just that was the most relevant example for me, and the one that still sticks with me. I bought this book in 1991, so 32 years later. But there were a lot of the legal and business aspects of the music business that I was 100%, 200% ignorant of when it came to the music business. And that gave me the foundation and a reference I was able to go back to time and time and time again.
I was just thinking as you were saying this, can you imagine how much money you would have had to spend to hire people to teach you everything that you learned from that book?
I can't even fathom it, and just the time it would have taken to find all of the different people who had all of those different expertises.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that's the remarkable thing about a book to me is sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you start reading a book. And then you learn all of these new things. And so if you had been on a quest to learn about the music business and you were trying to hire experts to help you, it's really hard to do when you don't know what you don't know. So yeah, it's a great,
Absolutely.
great book. So what is the third one?
The third one is, it's a little bit different. So this one, I think, was originally written in the 1920s
Oh,
as a
wow.
series of newspaper articles before it was gathered into a book. I got this version of it as a Christmas gift one year.
And
It's
what is the book?
It's called Gold Ahead, a book of cure for lean purses. What most people know it as, though, is The Richest Man in Babylon.
Wow. I
This,
love that book.
yes, I do too. I read this book every year. I learned about this from listening to a Jim Rohn speech, like a lot of people learned about this book first. And and as Jim says when he talks about it, I went out and bought it the second I heard about it. And it's a little bit different in that it's told in parable form. It does sometimes feel like a book that was written in the 20s, but I love that about it as well. And on the surface, it's about financial responsibility, but it really, there's a lot in that book about just personal integrity that I love. And this is
Yeah, I
another
have to go
book that
back and read it.
yeah, it's another book that, again, I've recommended hundreds of times and have bought, again, dozens and dozens of copies for friends and family.
So why do you read it every year? What
The
is it about that book?
the lessons are evergreen. Again, with the parable form, it's a really entertaining and quick read as well. And I get something out of it every single time I read it.
I feel that way about The Alchemist. I have read The Alchemist many, many, many times. And, you know, the lesson that I get from The Alchemist is the journey may not be what you expect it to be, but you'll always end up where you were meant to be.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's another book I love too.
Yeah.
And I love not just that book, but I love the author's way of marketing the book and the way he thinks about that book, and that his goal is to get it to as many people as possible. And somewhere along the way, some of them will buy it. And it's really the way he markets that book is an exact match for what you just said as the lesson of the book.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So talk to me about, people always say to me, Lisa, I don't know how you find time to read. How do you find time to read? What is your reading habit?
I'm going to quote Lisa Larter on this. I don't find the time, I make the time to read, because it's critically important to me. It's been the greatest tool in my business career by far. Is if I don't know about something, I will seek out a book to try to learn it. And even if I'm not seeking out a book, I will still pick up books all the time to read it. And I'll always be able to find lessons in them that I can apply to whatever situation I have going on. So to me, it's, you know, I don't find time to eat either. I make time to eat because it's important to me. It's about at the same level.
And when do you read? Do you have any habits around when you read books?
I try to read early in the morning. I try to start my day off by writing. And then after I'm done writing, to read. And then I always try to have a book with me, because life offers you lots of little breaks. 5 minutes, 10 minutes when you're in a waiting room, or, just a pause in your day. And it's a great time to read a little bit. I'm not much of a social media person, and I don't really have a lot of apps on my phone that I fill time with. I fill that time with reading instead.
Do you listen to audiobooks too?
I listen to podcasts, but I don't really listen to many audiobooks. The exception has been the Bobiverse series, which is a science fiction series that is just so rich in audiobook version versus the actual physical books. But for the most part, I love a physical book.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, something you and I have talked about, I know before, but I'll go on my soapbox about again. I think a book is the most perfect piece of technology ever invented by mankind. I don't ever have to update the operating system. I don't have to charge it. It contains an incredibly dense amount of data in just a small thing you can hold in your hands. And I can write in it. You can see that I've taken a lot of notes in this one. I've got, if you open up to just about any page, you can see handwritten notes in it. And again, I don't need any external power or anything.
Mm-hmm. So talk to me a little bit about tips you have for reading for maximum impact, because I know you use Evernote as a tool for reading. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you use Evernote with your books and why you use a tool in conjunction with your greatest piece of technology ever invented that doesn't need to be
Yes.
charged?
Yeah, it's a combo, right? So I like to take notes when I read books. I've got highlighters. In fact, the book I'm reading right now, The Founders, you can see I've got my highlighter with it. And as I go through, I highlight things that really jump out to me. Though, you read it and you go, aha, or wow, that's really insightful. And I don't want to lose that because you can't remember everything. So I'll highlight a book and I'll take notes. And then when I'm done, either myself or some of the people I work with will enter those notes into Evernote. Everything I've highlighted, and I take notes knowing that it will be entered into Evernote so that I can access it at any time. I started doing this back in 2016. I really wish I'd started doing it back in 1991, frankly. But I started when I started, and now I have 6 years working on my 7th full of notes. Let me pull up my Evernote right now. I have in my current book notes 4,763 notes I've captured from reading since 2016.
Wow.
And what I'll do is if I have a topic that I want to refresh on, all I have to do is search in Evernote. Copyright, for example, like we were talking about early, and it'll pull up, every note I've made in every book I've read since 2016, notes I've made that have that word in the in the text anywhere.
So
and I'll also add tags as I find something, I think, oh, this is great about leadership, but maybe it doesn't have leadership in the actual text. So I'll add the tag so that I can go through and really get a very much a Michael's Cliff Notes on this topic.
So talk to me about how you choose what to highlight in a book, because what I find myself doing is I tried to do what you do because I thought it was fascinating, but I found that I highlighted or underlined way too much stuff. It's like, as I'm reading, I'm like, oh, this is good. Oh, this is good. Oh, this is good. And so you must have a way that you choose, this is so good, I need to capture it in Evernote, versus, oh, I'm just underlining everything that I like. What is that?
That was a learning process, like a lot of stuff is, right? So I went through an early phase, like you're talking about, where I highlighted half the book and it just wasn't relevant when I'd go back and look.
Right.
And I tried to go through and read an entire book's worth of notes every once in a while as well. And then I went through a phase where I was not highlighting nearly enough, and something would come up and I'd remember, oh, I read about that in X book. I'd go back and check my book notes. It wasn't there. So it probably took me, if I'm being honest, a good 2 years of doing it before I had really refined what would be relevant to me in using this tool later. It was a learning process.
I know I've had to force myself in thought readers to really, every week when I write the weekly email with the discussion questions, I've had to really force myself to isolate 3 to 4 things in the pages that I read that were the most important. And so I often end up going through the book with my little flags, and I'll have more than 4. And then I have to actually pick and prioritize, like, which are actually the most important. I won't let myself, my ideal is always 3, but if there's a 4th one that's really good, I'll give myself permission to go to 4, but I have to stop myself then, because it can't all be great or you lose the greatness. So I was curious
Right.
as to how you did that.
That's a great point, because in a lot of other areas, I use that same rule of 3, yardstick, because people's attention spans are short. So, and it's easy to remember 3 things. It's
Yes.
kind of natural for people. So that's a great rule.
Yes, absolutely. All right. So as we wrap up, I have one final question. You might have already gave us the answer, but what are you reading right now?
Yeah, I'm reading right now The Founders. This was a book recommended to me by my father-in-law, and I'm a fan of everything. Well, not everything. I'm a fan of a lot of what the PayPal people went on to do. This was the original kind of group that created PayPal before it sold. And those people have gone on to do amazing things. And the author's premise in the book is that the story is really undertold. Everyone knows about Elon Musk, but what that group of people, even beyond Elon Musk, have done after they left PayPal is it's incredible.
Interesting.
But the one I've got on deck, I see behind you on your desk.
Smart Brevity.
Yes.
Yes. That's this month's Thought Readers book.
I'm really anxious to dig into that, because that's something I preach a lot as well. If you can say it in 3 words instead of 30, it's generally going to be better received.
Absolutely.
Generally. Yeah.
You will laugh when you see my first email for this book for Thought Readers, because I literally used the strike through, and I'm modeling what I wrote. And then I look at what I wrote. I'm like, okay, how do I make it briefer? And I use the strike through, and I changed my sentences, but I left all the strike throughs in the body of the email so that people can actually see me trying to apply
Oh, that's fun.
smart brevity to my writing. So that's great.
Can't
All
wait.
right. Well, thank you, Michael. This has been great. It's always a pleasure to connect with you and learn with you. I love your love of books, and I've written down 3 books that I need to go buy today. I don't need to know everything about music, but I need to go find Ego is the Enemy. I need to buy a hard copy of The Richest Man in Babylon. And now I'm super curious about The Founders. So I love this, because I love to read, and I love learning what other books have really made an impact on other people's lives. So thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for what you're doing with Thought Readers. I can tell you, as someone who loves books, there is nothing better for me than finding a package on my door and opening up a new book that I didn't pick for myself. That someone else thought, hey, this is something you should read. Love it.
Yeah. Well, and if you're listening and you are interested in Thought Readers is free in 2023. You just have to buy your own book, whatever format you want, and you can register at thoughtreaders.com. We read a book a month, approximately 50 pages a week. And we share our insights and ideas and have great, rich discussions about the books that we're reading. So if you'd like to get on the reading bandwagon, please join us there. Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of She Talks Business, and we will see you again next week. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Lisa.